Well, let's go there then. Let's look at the pros and cons and the realities that come from living in a society that loves headlines and labels. And this could be as simple as you're smart, you're so smart, you're so beautiful, you're so kind, you're so funny, and any of the labels that maybe get given to you through adolescence and into life that you're then expected to carry and live up to. But it also could be this is a 7-figure entrepreneur, or, you know, you're a great problem solver, or it's a headline of like, if you're not this, then you're that we live in on social. Like, what is both the pros and the cons of labeling and the impact that labeling has on beliefs and therefore the kind of lives that people can live?
I think labeling is huge, because if you look at Carol Dweck's research, for example, her whole thing, or a big part of her whole philosophy around the fixed versus growth mindset, is that people that tend to have a fixed mindset tend to label themselves in a certain way.
Right.
And not always just, we have a sort of a myth about the growth mindset that it's like, oh, I'm not good at this, or I'm this type of person, and then that's it.
Yep.
Well, actually, a big problem as well is labeling that you are this type of person. So it's an idea we feel certain about. Now we need to transform that word. That word feel is the most important word of that sentence. So we have to change that word feel. So we start off by recognizing, what's the story? What are other stories that might be true here? And you're not saying I'm going to buy into any of these stories, but you're giving yourself alternatives. And the reason you're doing that is because most of the time what we try to do is we try to prove ourselves wrong, logically.
Yeah, and we could displace instead.
Exactly. You're displacing by giving yourself other options. And you're not buying into anyone yet, but you're giving yourself choices.
Okay.
The next one is you look at the community or the culture and you ask yourself, how's this being reinforced for me? So why am I believing this? And sometimes we believe in it because you've experienced it directly, but more often than not, the reason we believe what we believe is because someone told us and we believed them, right? We gave them authority, right? I call it the principle of false authority. Sometimes someone is an expert in one space, they go into another space, they give us advice, and we believe them in this. I know a lot of people that are doctors but never got their medical degree, because anytime anyone's ever sick, they give their hypotheses. This is what you should do. A lot of fitness coaches out there, this is what you should do. I'm training for the marathon at the moment. You know what, Owen, you need to do? And I'm asking myself, have you ever trained for the marathon? They go, well, no, but this is what you should do. Everyone's an expert. So the community we surround ourselves often is the source. So once again, you do an inventory and you go, where have I heard this belief from? Where's this been reinforced? What social media channels or media channels or shows have reinforced this message? Because that then helps you to understand who has said this to you, and it gets you to recognize the authority behind it might not be wrong. So it's almost
like if you were writing a paper, you want to fill it full of good citations that were well researched and had value to them. You're sense checking this as an audit in yourself.
Exactly. And then you realize, well, actually, I've been using this study for ages, and actually the study didn't take place. Right. So it's understanding,
You mean like the whole misinterpreted 93% of all communication is nonverbal?
Yeah, exactly. 55% is this, 38% is this, and stuff like that, which has been quoted since the 50s. But the point of it is that you look at the community or culture where that's come. The third is the actions. And we started talking about this, the habits and the beliefs, which comes first. Well, then you have to look at what are the beliefs that I'm engaging in that's reinforcing this belief? And what are new behaviors that I could engage in that would reinforce a different belief or a different story? And that's when you start to look at the other stories. What community could you surround yourself with that would help reinforce the new stories? So that SCA, that's all about the stories, the community, and the actions.
Yep.
And then the L, E, and D is really, first of all, logically, that's when you start to challenge. That's when you start to bring out okay, let's say if you did it with exactly what to say you would do. So what makes you think of this? Or, what understanding do you have of how this works? Right? And where did you get that perspective from? And that's when you start to analyze the logic. In CBT, it would be challenging the particular distortions inside that. In NLP, it'd be the meta model where you go, how do you know that's true? Where do you get your evidence?
And this is you working to break it, basically.
That's exactly.
Yep.
And so that's the other side, again, a Socratic approach, really. Then the emotional side is, what are the feelings that you've created this belief from? We often don't see reality as it is. We see it as we feel. Wow. So if I'm hangry, it means I'm looking at the world through the lens of being hangry. So I'm distorting the world because I'm hungry. I'm angry at the world, and therefore I'm seeing everything you do pisses me off. Why? Because I'm hungry. Now, I'm not thinking about it as I'm hungry. I'm just seeing you piss me off. But you wouldn't piss me off if I wasn't angry, if I wasn't agitated.
Right.
So we see the world differently depending on how we feel. And so if you think about it, when you formulate that belief, that story you tell yourself, you formulate it when you were feeling a certain way. So you then start to unpack, what is the feeling that drives this belief? And you start to understand that when that happened, when I got that learning, that lesson about life, like I believe that I'll always be alone, right? It was because I was feeling bad because I'd just been dumped. Right. So I felt like I was a piece of crap. I felt that no one would ever love me. And that feeling in turn translated into the belief. And that is one of the things that people miss out on, because so many people stick in just the logic. It's always like, the way I beat you in beliefs is I logically bully you to the point where you go, oh, I was wrong. But knowing that you were wrong is not the same as feeling you were wrong. But when you recognize the feeling is different, that's a big difference.
And that the feeling may be connected to a moment, and that moment is no longer true.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the moment was probably not even true then. It was just the feeling that you had, and the feeling is not a fact. So just because you felt that way doesn't mean that that was true. It's just the way you felt.
Okay.
And disconnecting that. And then the final one, and this is one of the most powerful ones, is that, how does it serve you, right? What do you get out of believing this? If you believe something, they did a fascinating study.
What is the benefit of that belief?
Exactly. They did a fascinating study a few years ago whereby they found that one of the things that was most likely to predict what a person believed is, do they want to believe it? Right, we are more likely to believe what we want to believe than we are to believe something in the space of facts. There's this great case where in 2012, when the world was about to end, there was a cult that says the world is going to end on this day. And then the world didn't end. And instead of turning around going, maybe this is all a lie, once again, cognitive dissonance, identity, all that sort of stuff, they said, well, thank goodness, because we believed and prayed, we saved the world.
Yay!
Exactly.
We did it.
Exactly. So it's win-win. And to me, it just speaks to how important wanting to believe it. So then what I would do is I would go, those other stories that we're putting out there, which of those stories will help you to do better? So if you believe the story that says I'll always be alone.
So this is a circle, right?
Exactly.
And even that feeling piece, you might ask yourself, how would you rather feel? What is the feeling that you are hoping to be able to chase and create movement?
That's it. And also recognize if you were feeling differently, then realize the reality would be different.